Brought to you by PrayLatin.com, makers of prayer cards featuring complete English phonetic renderings of Latin pronunciations.
You know, I've seen it all. I've never hidden the fact that I am not the most comfortable with the canonization of Blessed Carlo Acutis. And it has nothing to do with Carlo Acutis himself. It has to do with things around his canonization. And really, it mostly has to do with how loosey-goosey the canonization process and standards have become since the 1980s, when the process was fundamentally reformed. The process was seriously watered down, and I've talked at length about this before. But it has nothing to do with Carlo Acutis. I have said multiple times, I believe Carlo Acutis was holier than I am. Without question, what I've read about his life, I have no issues with him per se. However, something breathtakingly tone deaf happened in the last couple of days, and it's almost made me a full-throated supporter for his canonization, because the worst possible people have come out and started attacking Carlo Acutis on one of the things that most people have no problems with regarding the young man himself, his love of Eucharistic miracles. You see, he's being attacked for being too traditional, too rigid, for not having embraced the new Eucharistic theology of the Church, and how the Eucharist is essentially a meal and it's all of its symbolic community nature, instead of being focused on what he was focused on, which was Eucharistic miracles. Now, for those who don't understand, Eucharistic miracles have never been like an endorsement of things happening in the Church. People, for whatever reason, take them in like these liturgical debates, trads versus non-traditionalists. They take these Eucharistic miracles as some sort of endorsement for things. The Church has always said since the Middle Ages that Eucharistic miracles are associated with non-belief, that they are essentially God lighting up a neon sign to get your attention, that he is truly present in the Eucharist. Always associated with priests who don't believe, or with congregations who don't believe. They are always associated that way. And I guarantee you, Carlo Acutis would have understood this better than many people today. This is why the story I have for you today is just astonishing in its tone deafness. And we go here to Revista Europa di Cultura, which is a sort of a Catholic website, with the headline, Young Carlo Acutis and Eucharistic Rudeness, by Andrea Grillo. If you don't know who Andrea Grillo is, we'll take a sidestep here, and I'll explain to you who Andrea Grillo is. He is a prominent Italian Roman Catholic theologian. He's a professor, known for his work in liturgical and sacramental theology. Since the 1990s, he has taught sacramental theology and philosophy of religion at the Pontifical Athenaeum of St. Anselmo in Rome, and liturgy at the Abbey of St. Giustina in Padua. He is what you might call an expert on post-conciliar theology. He's recognized for his influence on liturgical reforms. He was a key figure in the writing and promulgation of Traditionis Custodes, Pope Francis's motu proprio that effectively banned the Latin Mass. He's often was described as Pope Francis's house liturgist, advocating for liturgical changes initiated, he says, by Vatican II. He opposed the TLM and the Novus Ordo Mass coexisting in peace together. He's written a whole lot of books taking Benedict XVI to the woodshed for the traditional Latin Mass. He's, we'll say, not the biggest fan of Carlo Acutis. Usually the people who criticize Carlo Acutis are people who tend to share mine and many of your opinions about the Mass and the sacraments and the crisis in the Church more broadly. This is a man who is responsible for much of the present iteration of the ongoing decades, if not centuries-long, crisis in the Church. And he's the one, an insider, one of Pope Francis's greatest allies, taking the young man to the woodshed for being rigid, if you can believe it. Go to the article. Quote, "How is it possible that a young blessed can communicate a Eucharistic theology so old, so heavy, So obsessive, so focused on the inessential, and so neglected instead on the decisive things. How is it possible that all the progress that the church has made in the last 70 years on the level of understanding the ecclesial value of the Eucharist and its celebration has been communicated in such a distorted way to the young ardent communicator, so as to suggest to him an understanding so deficient, so defective, so one-sided, who indulged him in this interest in quote-unquote miracles, neglecting the true miracle? I wondered where the reasons for this little scandal lie. To document myself, I searched on the official website of the Carlo Acutis Foundation. The section dedicated to Eucharistic miracles is truly singular. Perhaps it is the clearest attestation of the distortion of gaze and vision that was perhaps inadvertently suggested to Carlo, or more likely was clumsily reworked and then imposed on him by bad teachers, from whom Carlo should have been defended and not handed over. If you examine the section he has linked here, you can read at the beginning 3 texts written by Cardinal Comastri, by Monsignor Raffaello Martinelli, and by Padre Roberto Coggio P. These are rather singular texts because they seem to come from another world, from isolated offices or from rooms without communication. To be on the threshold of a super communicator saint seems like quite a paradox to me. End quote. Every one of those theologians he cites there has a traditional understanding of the Eucharist, meaning a Catholic understanding of the Eucharist. No innovations, none of that stuff. Things they said as theologians about the Eucharist would have been recognizable to past generations of Catholics as basic Catholic things. Andrea Grillo objects to Carlo Acutis having a Catholic understanding of the Eucharist and of quote-unquote miracles. This is the man who helped write Traditionis Custodes. He helped crush your diocesan TLMs. He helped inadvertently lead or give the bishops in many places the excuse to kick the Institute of Christ the King, Sovereign Priest, or the FSSP out of your dioceses. He helped in his own way to get the ordinations of traditionally minded priests in France put on hold for years. That who has a problem with Carlo Acutis. His canonization is coming, September. Again, I wasn't all that on board with him, not because of him, but because of a lot of the weird figures who have been canonized through this wishy-washy, very loose process that had developed in the last 40 years. But now, maybe I can put that aside, because if he has an adversary like that, someone who's opposed to him like that, then perhaps, just perhaps, he's okay. I'm curious what you have to say about this. Let me know in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. Sharing this on social media helps a lot too. And if you've ever thought about supporting the work that we do here at Return to Tradition, there are links in the description box below, Patreon, Subscribestar, that kind of thing, as well as the join button. Sometimes it looks like a join button. Sometimes it looks like that plus where it says subscribe. Either way, all those options were asked for by viewers like you, and they do help keep these daily messages coming. It is greatly appreciated. But let me know what you think of this attack out of literally left field on Carlo Acutis in the comments, please. And always pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.